I'm going to call the March 26, 2018 meeting back to order. If we could please, we'll stand for a moment of silence and then the presentation of colors from the Garrett Academy of Technology, JROTC. So a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Now the presentation of the colors. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. You all can be seated. We already, for those of you who are in the audience today, when we called to order at 4, we adopted the agenda and approved the consent agenda items, and we approved the February 26th and March 12th special called meeting minutes as well. So we're reconvening now from executive session. We have a couple of items. The first item is a contractual matter, the charter school facility.
I move to approve the 3 lease agreements
Second.
with the changes as mentioned in executive session.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Mr. Garrett and a second from Ms. Von Coates to approve the leases with the changes we discussed in executive session. Do we have any questions? All right, Mr. Hollenshed?
Come back to me, please.
Okay, Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Garrett?
Yes.
Reverend Collins?
Due to the unclear language, I vote no.
Okay, Ms. Jeffrey?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
No.
Mr. Staubs?
Yes, with the correction that we mentioned that staff will be doing.
Right. Reverend Mack?
Yes.
Mr. Hollenshed?
No.
Okay, I vote yes, and the motion passes. All right. The next item is the District 20 land agreement.
I move to direct staff to accept and execute the sale of the property in D20 as presented to the board.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Mr. Garrett and a second from Mr. Miller. Do we have any questions on that item? Okay, Mr. Hollenshed?
Aye.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Garrett?
Yes.
Reverend Collins?
Abstain.
Ms. Jeffrey?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Staubs?
For the reason I stated about being the attorney for the other organization, I abstain as well.
Okay. Reverend Mack?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion passes. The next item on the agenda is the D3 bus lot options. Do I have a motion for that?
I move to disapprove the lot lease presented and approve the lot at James Allen Elementary as first approved in 2014.
Okay, we have a motion for Mr. Garrett. Do I have a second?
Second.
What is your motion?
I move to disapprove the lot lease and approve the lot at James Allen Elementary School as first presented and approved in 2014.
All right, so Mr. Garrett made the motion and Ms. Coates seconded. Do we have any questions?
Yes.
About that motion? Reverend Collins?
Yes. And we discussed earlier about the 6-month rule about this item that we voted on the last board meeting, I believe it was, about not placing the property at the James Allen Elementary School. So I just want to go on record that you say the 6-month rule does not apply to this?
No, I was going to say, we don't have a 6-month rule. That's,
Okay,
if you,
all right.
I've asked you to show me where the 6-month rule
Okay,
is.
so the 6-month rule disappeared all of a sudden.
No?
I know it's been used this year already. Well, last year it was used, I know. Okay, so
Okay, all right.
table that for a second. But we did discuss already publicly about the bus option. The board voted publicly not to put it on James Allen Elementary School, but to come back with other options. That option should not be James Allen Elementary School. The board voted no for that already. Why we're revisiting that tonight from executive session without there being a public notice. A public notice to the residents out there, we're considering your property again. That's really my discourse of this whole thing. My displeasure is that there's no public notice. The people don't know about it. We told them we're not voting it there. Now, we come from executive session, we're going to vote with the bus all in James Allen Elementary School again for the third or fourth time in the last 6 months.
Reverend Collins, would you like to make another motion?
Todd?
Okay, no, I'm just on the point of it not being in the agenda. It's in two places on the agenda. It's listed publicly in executive session and then again in action items number 8B1.
It is listed for the
And,
committee to hold.
This has been in progress since 2014. We're at,
Cindy says since 2011. actually.
2010 ballot.
Right, but margin
and
says
this,
executive
just
session.
along those same lines, right now, if your child is set to go to Camp Allen,
Camp
Camp
Road.
Road Middle School,
Right.
if we don't approve a location for the bus lot on James Allen, the bus lot has been in a residential neighborhood in James Allen since Fort Johnson High School and James Allen High School was consolidated, which is over 30 years ago. This is putting it in a different location, but it's still in a residential community, as are bus lots in Wando, as are bus lots in Cario. And this is to allow Camp Road Middle construction to be able to move forward. If it doesn't happen this month, then it's going to be delayed a year.
We understand that.
So kids will remain in
Right,
trailers for another
So
year.
wait a minute. We
have a
understand
motion?
that it's delayed a little bit, but the point is, when you vote publicly no to James Allen Elementary School,
I voted yes.
well, that
Just for
motion
the record,
failed.
yeah.
The board voted no publicly. So now we come out of executive session with no open discussion and vote again
Well,
when the community is not present.
We're having open discussion right now.
Yeah, but it's deceptive to the public because they don't know that. They find out now.
Reverend
Before we
Collins,
vote.
it's on the agenda that was published.
Executive session
No, it's
item.
on the operations part. All right, we're not going to argue about that anymore.
Eight
So
B1.
Kevin, and then Cindy.
Anywhere else by Robert Rules of Order, the prevailing side wins, and someone on the failing side cannot bring it back up for 6 months. That is in Robert Rules. So,
And that's
the question,
policy.
wait a minute, so the question is, on the prevailing side, who on the prevailing side put this back, so you did, Priscilla?
Yeah, and
But it's not listed on
I'll
the
tell you,
agenda. You're not listed here.
Wait a minute.
All right, Kevin has the floor, Reverend Collins.
So you put it back on the agenda, Priscilla?
yes.
And let me just answer that too. And we as a board directed staff to conduct further research.
Someone had on the prevailing side, place it back on the agenda. That's just, we got rules.
And your name's
That's
not
all.
on it.
We can't-
Right, but
can't play.
but we as a board directed staff to conduct further research and come back to us at this meeting. So we made that agreement. So I asked Natalie today about that, wherever Natalie is, and we took that action. Priscilla asked. So Kevin, then Cindy.
For clarity, the actual motion presented to the board is a non-motion. It says that the staff is requesting that we make a decision. So if anybody else has a motion they would like to make, now would be the time to make it.
All right, Cindy, and then Priscilla?
So Kevin, to answer your question, When I voted last time, I was of the understanding that we were going to lease for 1 year and that the buses would then go to Gresham Megget, which it cannot happen now. And so the other part that I didn't understand, which I now understand, is the $104,000 a year or whatever it costs to lease, because now we have another option of a 10-year lease, would come out of the general operating funds, which is the money that we use to pay for teachers and classrooms. And I felt like I would rather have the money go into teachers, classrooms, personnel that we badly need in our schools, as opposed to being put into a lease for a bus lot. It's a hard decision. The other thing is I want to see the students who are supposed to go into the new school go into the new school next year and not be in trailers for 1 more year. So for those reasons, I reconsidered my vote from last time.
I just want to make sure I remember the statement when we deal with the underprivileged schools like North Charleston High that are not staffed appropriately, that we have your support to make sure that
Absolutely.
Principal Darby has what he needs.
Absolutely. I got him a math teacher earlier this year.
She kind of did.
All right, Mr. Miller?
I had questions. I wanted to make sure that the public had an opportunity to hear the questions that I asked. So, Mr. Barori, can you come up, please? The question I had was to give us a definition between a bus lot and a bus depot. I think for clarification purposes, I think the public might want to have some idea of exactly what the district will be doing on those lots.
Doing and not doing.
Doing and not doing, I should say, yeah.
So the only depot, what I would call a depot that exists, is run by the state at Azalea. Maintenance garage, full-up work, everything that can be done on a bus. At every other bus lot that we have, including the existing bus lot at Camp Road at Fort Johnson, there is minor maintenance that's done. When I say minor maintenance, it's a fuel truck pulling up to do wiper blades, headlights, and they do fueling at that location as well. That's the same type of maintenance and same type of operation that's done at all of our bus lots. So there'd be no difference at this location.
And you stated earlier that, to your knowledge, you don't know if the state has identified the difference between a lot or a depot, but you said based on your interpretation of what you feel those words are, that was your assessment, correct?
That, yes, I believe a depot is where full maintenance is conducted.
Okay. But the state does identify size of lots based on number of buses, distances between, those kinds of things, correct?
They have governance that directs us how to construct new bus lots.
Okay. And just for those who on the board who did not attend the Camp Road Middle School community engagement, I can't say it was hosted by Reverend Eric Mack, but Eric did most of the speaking for the district, I should say. Some of the concerns that I heard at that particular meeting was that the residents who live in that area, who live in that community, I should say, were concerned about the magnitude of the type of work that they thought would be taking place at that lot if it were to stay at the current location at Camp Road. They were afraid of massive overhauls of the buses and fuel trucks and all that. And so you're saying that that doesn't really happen outside of the bus depot that we have on Azalea Drive, but on all the other lots, there's a fuel truck, they do minor maintenance, it might be a change of a windshield or a flashlight, a headlight, things like that.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
All right, any other questions?
I do have one more question. If this item is to be considered tonight, then I ask the board to have this withdrawn and resubmit it properly with the full board members' names placed on the document that are presenting it. But this does not say Priscilla Jeffrey or any other person that's presenting this item. And according to Robert's rule, which you said Robert rules is policy, but there's not one to stress what it is, that it would come back properly with the 4 names listed, and also give notice to the community that we're considering the James Allen Elementary School again, other than just voting tonight.
All right, would you want to make that in the form of a motion?
Yes.
All right. So Reverend Collins's motion is.
Reverend Collins, what's your motion, Reverend Collins?
That the item presented tonight to place the buses at the James Allen Elementary School be withdrawn from the agenda and brought back, placed with the proper documentation with the 4 board members listed, identified themselves as presenting this item back according to Robert's rules. That way, that they can fulfill the 6-month rule.
I would point out that what you're holding in your hand is not a motion to put the bus slots at James Allen Elementary School.
What this says is, James Allen Elementary School or lease property on Farley Road. That's what mine says.
Right, that's what it says, so it's not, it's
And the
not,
district's recommendation says?
nothing.
Well, Todd made the recommendation.
No, I'm telling you to read for the public that it doesn't say the district is making a
The
recommendation.
administration recommends the board make a decision now regarding that location.
Thank
Right.
you.
And the board has already made a decision on district, James Allen Elementary School. That decision's already been made
So Reverend.
earlier, last month, rather.
Do we have a second for Reverend Collins's motion?
What was the,
Is that a motion, or is it a request to Todd to withdraw his motion?
I thought
think it's a motion.
Chris's motion was in the future.
No, now.
No, now.
In other words, we withdraw the item from the agenda and
So
present
Reverend
it back
Collins is making a
with the
motion
proper
to withdraw this
documentation
item.
with the full board members' names listed on it who are presenting it.
So do we
This
have
doesn't
a-
have anybody's name on it.
So do we have a second?
Oh, and what Reverend Collins is asking has been standard policy and practice for us since I think I've been on the board,
Right,
correct?
but the difference is, let me just explain, because I
Right, no,
want to make sure the public understands. The difference is, at our March 12th special call meeting,
Told them to
we as a
come back.
group asked the staff to go back and look at Signal Point Road and another option on Folly Road, and to come back to us with recommendations. That, they came back and said, board, you need to do something about this now. And that's all that they're doing. So there's not an action item that somebody's proposing that we do X. It's saying, board, it's in your hands to do something. And as, you know, as we all know, this was.
Can we see if there's a second so we can,
Right, all right.
so
Is
we
there a
can call the
second?
motions?
All right,
I'll second it.
all right. So the first motion is from Todd that.
Todd, you want?
Move to disapprove the bus lot lease proposed and approve the bus lot at James Allen Elementary School as first approved in 2014.
Okay, so for that motion, Mr. Hollenshed,
Nay.
Ms. Coates,
Yes.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes.
Reverend Collins,
No.
Ms. Jeffrey,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
No.
Mr. Stobbs,
Yes.
Reverend Mack,
No.
and I vote yes, so the motion passes. So I think that makes your motion moot to be able to withdraw because we've just voted on it.
So, I just want to caution you that you're the board chair, and what this is pretty deceptive, what we're doing.
It's
I'm
Reverend
going on
Collins, it's
record
not.
that It's deceptive and
okay.
dishonest.
Well, I take
Reverend
issue with
Collins is
that.
welcome to his opinion, but we have received
Right.
legal advice on this.
We-
And you received bad advice.
All right. So,
And how long?
I
has this
trust
been
you,
in our-
Natalie.
How long has this been in your packet?
I just want to clarify. So this information was provided to us on Wednesday of last week. It wasn't an action item. It was the staff telling us that we needed to move forward because, as Cindy said, this was voted on in the 2010 referendum. The location for the bus lot was decided on in 2014.
Madam
So-
Chair,
But
Let's
you
move
heard
on.
Ms. you heard
Madam
Ms. Jeffrey
Chair,
say
may
she
I
brought
make
it
a
back.
motion for the student transfer appeal, please?
Yep.
I would like to uphold the D2 board's decision. I'd like to make a motion that the board uphold the District 2 constituent board decision regarding the student transfer
Second.
appeal.
Okay, so we have a motion from Ms. Coates and a second from Mr. Stobbs to uphold the constituent boards.
And that was what,
I'm sorry?
Jenkins, right?
No,
No, this is this is my
It's
president.
transfer.
Oh, the transfer.
This is
Yep,
a transfer,
transfer.
not the
Transfer, gotcha.
expulsion.
Okay,
Transfer.
any questions? Mr. Hollenshed?
Nay.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Garrett?
Yes.
Reverend Collins?
Come back.
Ms. Jeffrey?
Yes.
That's a 45.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Stobbs?
Yes.
Reverend Collins?
All confused.
Reverend Mack?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion passes. The next item is item C, which was a student expulsion appeal.
I would like to make a motion to overturn the D4 board's decision and place the student in the after-hours program at Daniel Jenkins.
Second.
I don't like to go against the constituent board, but in this case, I'd like to take one last step before expulsion.
Yep. Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to overturn the D4 decision and place the student in the Daniel Jenkins after-hours program, which is from 4 to 6. Do I have any questions?
Do we provide transportation for that?
I'm sorry, I think we do provide transportation.
I don't think so.
No, for the
No.
after hours, do we not?
We have in regular.
No,
No.
not for Daniel Jenkins.
No.
Can we,
Can we put them in regular
transportation if they need a car to pass or whatever.
Right,
Okay,
we
so
don't
we
run a
have
bus,
some
but we
di-
do Carter
We have some
passes.
discussion.
Can we amend it to have the student be in during the day? I think that's what we discussed.
Because then they're provided transportation and,
Yeah, that'd be
I
easier.
will accept that friendly motion and amendment, and I will change my motion to say Daniel Jenkins, period.
right,
Okay, thank
gotcha.
you.
but do you want to say Daniel Jenkins on board probation, so there's just a higher level of, or just Daniel Jenkins?
Just Daniel Jenkins.
Okay, all right, so there's a motion, Cindy amended the motion, are you okay with that, Reverend Mack? Yes. Okay, Mr. Hollingshed,
Come back to me.
Ms. Coates,
Yes.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes.
Reverend Collins,
Yes.
Ms. Jeffrey,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Staubs,
Yes.
Reverend Mack,
Yes.
Mr. Hollingshed.
Yes.
I vote yes, the motion passes. The next item is a student placement appeal.
I'd like to uphold the District 2 Constituent Board's decision, which was to place the student at Daniel Jenkins.
Second.
No, that is the one. This is the one, Kevin.
And she got the right to
You
This is the right
withdraw
one.
that.
This is the one.
I would like
Reverend
to
Mack.
withdraw my motion. I'll be over here sitting quietly. Priscilla's, I defer to Priscilla when it comes to educational issues.
Priscilla, would you?
like to make a motion?
Put them back in Wanda.
Back to one, yeah.
On board,
Guys, we're not supposed to be saying school names.
Yeah, back, this is the right one.
so
all
the
right.
motion that I think you all want to say is you want to overturn the D2 decision and return the student to their
Back to
home
home
school
school.
I second.
on board
Second.
probation.
All right.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
Who's capturing motions? Did we capture that motion correctly?
Move to overturn the
Andy or Dr.
D2
Postaway?
Constituent Board
Stop.
decision.
All right, hold on, everybody. So the motion is to overturn the District 2 decision and return the student to their home school on board probation.
No, which is just a
Who
probation or not?
seconded?
Yep.
Who made the
I-
motion?
I made the motion.
Who made this?
And Priscilla
Probation or no probation?
I think it needs to be
No
board
probation.
Okay.
probation at the
The
school.
motion is
What I
with
said.
probation.
Yep.
Do you want to ask for a friendly amendment or
Yes.
make another
I'd
motion?
like to send the student back to the school, period.
So you're asking Kate
Right,
and Priscilla if they want to change their
I don't want to change my
motion.
motion. I want to leave it as it is. I think there's some other things we need to address
You want
there, which we
probation?
will.
Yeah, we need, there's some other things we need to look
Well-
at.
Probation until when?
There's a bigger
The end of the
issue.
school year.
Okay, I'll take that.
Okay, so, any other questions? Mr. Hollingshed?
State it again.
To overturn the D2 decision and return the student to Wando on board probation. All right, Mr.
homeschool.
Hollingshed?
Aye.
I'm sorry, homeschool. whatever. All right, Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Garrett?
Yes.
Reverend Collins?
And you said yes to the end of the school year. You
Yes.
said Yes.
Yes. Ms. Jeffrey?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Staubs?
Yes.
Reverend Mack?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion passes. And the next item on our agenda is special recognitions. Ms. Taylor?
Good evening, Chair Darby, Vice Chair Mack, board members, Dr. Postaway, special guests. We have 3 special recognitions this evening, and I'd first like to ask the students and staff who are present from Camp Road Middle School to come forward. Charleston County School District students and schools participated in the 32nd Annual Quest Academic Competition at Trident Technical College on Saturday, March 3rd, 2018. Students participated in 4 levels of competition, and students earned points in team competitions in math, science, and social studies, and in individual competitions in composition, public speaking, and visual arts. Schools whose students earned the most total points won the overall awards at each level. One of the major highlights of the day was when Camp Road Middle School won the Level 1 team title. Although CCSD had a few schools who made it into the top 3 finishing rounds, Camp Road Middle was the only CCSD school to win an overall team title. Congratulations to Camp Road Middle School Quest team. Please give them a warm round of applause.
y'all.
Don't leave.
Excuse me, sir.
I'd now like to ask Renitha
Number 5.
Kumara Singha to please come forward.
That's awesome.
Renitha is from Orange Grove Charter School, and he edged out an 8th grader in the finals to win the 2018 Post and Courier Spellbound. The spelling bee was held on March 8, 2018. Renitha locked up the championship by spelling the word Topang. 50 students from across the county competed in this year's event. This victory was especially sweet for Renitha because he came so close to winning the 2018 Charleston County School District spelling bee just 6 weeks ago. He was the runner-up. Renitha is ready to go represent CCSD in the National Scripps Spelling Bee in Washington, D.C. Congratulations, Renitha. We're proud of you.
And what was that word again he had to spell?
Topang.
Spell it, Michael. Spell it. I dare you. Spell it, Michael.
I'm gonna write it down. Let me do a spell check on that.
And finally, I'd like to ask representatives from the following schools to come forward: Carrio Middle School, Charleston Charter School for Math and Science, James Island Charter High School, and Wando High. Project Lead the Way is a nonprofit organization that serves millions of K-12 students and teachers in over 10,000 schools across the United States. The organization's recognition program honors schools that are committed to increasing student access, engagement, and achievement in their programs. Carrio Middle School and Charleston Charter for Math and Science received Distinguished School Gateway status for the Project Lead the Way opportunities offered to its middle school students. Receiving the Distinguished School Honor for their Project Lead the Way engineering classes was James Island Charter High School, and Wando High School was recognized as a Distinguished School for their Project Lead the Way engineering and biomedical science classes. Let's congratulate all of these schools whose transformative curriculum continues to produce exemplary progress. That concludes tonight's special recognition.
Thank you very much, Ms. Taylor. The next item on the agenda is visitors and public comments. Reverend Mack?
So we have about 20 speakers tonight, and close to it. And please do forgive me if I mispronounce your last name.
I know.
You cannot possibly screw up Stallings.
Yeah.
Who's that?
Stallings, Jody
Stalling
Stallings.
Joey, I got it. All right, so we'll allow them opportunity to exit, and then we'll get started.
Good evening. I'm Jody Stallings, representing the
minute.
Charleston.
Just
one minute.
Sorry,
Give us a second.
I will give you a second.
Yeah.
Because
Just
We
one
wanted
minute.
you to be able, everybody to be able to hear you as those folks exit, so.
Okay, so we're in this order. Jody Stallings is already there at the podium, so we'll have Luann,
Roosevelt.
you got it, and Samantha Blake, and then Taylor Corn Perry in that order. Go ahead.
I'm Jody Stallings, representing the Charleston Teacher Alliance, and I'd like to talk about discipline. Teachers can't teach without discipline in the classroom. Students can't learn without discipline in the classroom. And schools can't be successful without discipline in the classroom. Despite this, many decisions from an administrative level for the past several years have weakened school discipline. This is driving teachers out of the classroom, and students are being forced into chaotic environments where it's impossible to learn. This is the district's progressive discipline plan. Most teachers don't even have access to it. Its message is not to give students reasonable consequences for disruptive behavior, but to keep them in the classroom at all costs, where they're free to direct the learning of their peers. Now, supposedly, its purpose is to keep students out of prison, and that's a goal that we all share. But it will put more students into prison because it deprives innocent students the opportunity to learn, and it doesn't teach misbehaving students that bad actions have bad consequences. Thousands of words are in this plan, but not one of them speaks to the child who's trying to do his best, but can't because his teacher is spending all of her time on one or two disruptive students. It doesn't affirm the rights of all students to have a quality education. Not one of its words says anything about our duty to protect students of all ages, all colors, all backgrounds from disruptive peers. We should end this focus on the rights of misbehaving students to go on misbehaving and start focusing on the rights of those who are in school to learn. We need to change this progressive discipline plan. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Luann Rosenzweig. I'm from the Charleston Area Justice Ministry. You all know me. I've been here fairly often. I'm that white woman from Mount Pleasant. And the reason that I am here is that I have the privilege of time that attending these meetings takes. I want to emphasize to you that I am here representing a lot of people who do not have that same privilege of time. I am representing a lot of people from all over the district who want to see restorative practices implemented in our schools. And I think this is a perfect piece to come after the first gentleman in that restorative practices does address the significant discipline problems we have in our school. I'm representing people like Jamila, whose children are at Stono Park and School of the Arts, Renique, whose children are at Stall High School in Bell Hall, Georgianne, with children at North Charleston and Dunston Elementary, Danny, Amy, Treva, Evelyn, Claire, Jennifer, and Sonia's children at SOA, Sinisha's child at Harborview, and all of the students in the Carolina Youth Action Project and their schools. These are just a few of the hundreds of children whose parents have seen the power of restorative practices and want this program implemented in their schools. This is just a glimpse of the list of our students. We also have hundreds of teachers who want this program in their schools. We urge you to put together an aggressive plan to implement and expand restorative practices and then fully fund it. We will work with you. We will have your back when you do this. We will support you as you continue to make this incredibly important shift in the school district. Put CCSD on a path of success, supported by a community in ways this district has never experienced. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Samantha Blake, and I teach 5th grade advanced studies at E.B. Ellington in District 23. I'm here tonight to ask you to please commit to the promises that my students received several years ago when they started an advanced studies program in District 23. 3 years ago, we started K-3. They were supposed to be going to C.C. Blaney when that building was shut down due to numbers. They were then housed at E.B. Ellington. They are still at E.B. Ellington. I stepped up with my kids last year from 4th grade to 5th grade, and we are now a complete K-5 program. My students, however, were promised that this program was going to be the Bust of District 23, since my children cannot get downtown to receive those same high and challenging academic standards. Unfortunately, when school choice came out, not one of my students was accepted into their chosen selected programs for continuing their advanced programming in Charleston County. They are districted to go to Baptist Hill, and to be quite frank with you, that school's program is not up to the standards that we expect for our students that are coming through Ellington's Advanced Studies program. My students have been exposed to very challenging curriculum through real-world problem-solving strategies. They've written resumes, they've applied for jobs, they received salaries, they've budgeted their money. Currently, they're writing and producing their own film. So I ask you that you maintain that promise that you promised 3 years ago and find a way for my students, not only this year, to be accepted into a program that is worth their time and challenges them to become the humans that they can become, but also in the future, so that next year I'm not standing in front of you again asking for the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Taylor Comperi, and I'm a senior creative writing major at School of the Arts. In January, I was here to speak to the Board of Trustees about student mental health. Over the past couple months, I've worked with my administration to organize and facilitate a roundtable discussion with 8 seniors at SOA surrounding the topics of school climate and student mental health. Today, I submitted a formal report to my administration analyzing my findings from the roundtable. The experiences students shared with me were disheartening to say the least. Many students in the roundtable share that a decline in mental health during the high school years in the form of stress, sleep deprivation, and in the most severe cases, clinical depression and anxiety, feels inevitable. In schools, poor mental health is the regular, said one student. It's normal to feel stressed all the time and generally unhappy. It's just accepted. Despite this feeling, the majority of students said they do not feel that they have access to adequate resources if they find themselves struggling with mental health. To echo what I said in January, in a system intended to be a vehicle for student empowerment, this reality is unacceptable. When student mental health is at risk, student participation decreases, test scores fall, student-teacher relationships suffer, and general class morale dissipates. As the Board of Trustees finalizes the budget for fiscal year 19, I urge you to strengthen mental health supports for students and specifically consider hiring a full-time school psychologist for every high school in CCSD. I urge you to prioritize the emotional well-being of the students you work so hard every day to serve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, good evening. My name is Bailey Abaddon. I'm also a senior creative writer at School of the Arts, and I participated in Taylor's roundtable discussion on mental health. Similar to the perceptions of the other 7 students who were a part of the conversation, I believe our current negative school climate has taken an extreme toll on the mental wellness of young people. Symptoms of stress, anxiety, and depression are dismissed as natural. This is an oversight which can no longer be tolerated. Speaking personally, I have watched the mental health of my peers decline at an unprecedented rate from middle school to high school. I myself have suffered symptoms of depression and anxiety. Though I would not solely put the blame for this on high school, I can say to you without a doubt that the stress of grades, the lack of communication between teachers and students, and the general monotony of the days all played a significant role. When I did feel this way, I was lucky enough to have the means and resources to cope with it, but many of my peers do not. I call on members of the school board to invest in resources that will better the mental climate across the district. We need school psychologists at every school, present every day, because this is not just happening at my school. This is truly an epidemic happening across the board. Every student should be offered the tools to feel good in school. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next, we have Jeff Casey, Trina Walker, Kevion Ford, and Willette Wilkins.
Hello, my name is Jeff Casey. First time here.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the forum, too. My daughter is an honors student in the AP class at E.B. Ellington. She's a 5th grader. She's going to middle school next year. We signed up for the school choice program. She signed up for 4 schools, and she has not been accepted yet. She's still on the wait list, but that's where we are right now. She's actually 240 in line for one, 90 for the other, 24 and 24. We're actually in a failing school district according to the CCSD report card. I'm just asking you if there's any way you guys can push the school through, since we are in a failing school district. I don't know what the rules or regulations are on that, but that's where we are right now.
Yeah, we can't directly answer your question, but we've got somebody that's taking notes out there, and so somebody will get back with
Okay.
you about an answer on that.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay.
But
Is there someone you can direct him to so he can actually get some feedback?
And Cindy Ambrose is sitting right behind you.
She's right behind you. Ms. Ambrose, right there.
Get his information.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know, we can, but they can talk.
Only 13% of 8-year-old African-American children could read at a 3rd grade level or higher in Charleston County in 2016-17 school year. My son was a 3rd grader in that year. We ranked 50th in the United States for public education in 2018. My son is now a struggling fourth grader. Whose vision was this? It certainly was not mine. I have come to make eye contact with those on a board. I want them to know I am a dissatisfied customer. I come armed with mothers and grandmothers, fathers and brothers. I come armed with statistics, facts, not opinions. We want our happy children back. I come blessed with KJM. They are getting stronger and leading the way. See, I started to read to my son when he was the size of an apricot pit. I remember him preaching, "Go Dogs Go," when he was close to 2. Upside down, he held his book, such confidence and security. I was proud he was happy with his silly little books. You visionaries, I remember each stage of development that has led my son to fear. Was it the testing? Was it the feeling of disappointment? Was it the change of teachers? Was it the pressure to perform? Pressure to perform? I am not wasting any more time trying to figure out who is accountable. I come with solutions and ideas. I already know that my son is going to need extra support. Middle schools have the highest rate of suspensions and arrests. I know this is a terrifying fact, does not sit well with me or anyone else. If we implemented restorative practices, we'd be trying something new. The definition of insanity is trying the same thing over and over and expecting different results. I suggest you check your budget and make this mess right. Yes, I am a customer of your vision of education. Let's teach the children how to communicate, work through conflicts, master their behaviors. Let's give them a voice to say, "I do not agree." Give them a safe space to find their spark, their groove, their next move. Yes, I am a supporter of restorative practices. I have researched, observed, visited, been involved. I wear a Hersey sweatshirt with proud. We have a solution. It's up to your visions and our children's ability to have an educational and social and moral success. Restorative practices will help clean up the rest. It sure can't make it any worse. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Kevion Ford, and I am an advanced studies student at E.B. Ellington Elementary. And today I'm going to be discussing the reason why I feel like, or really any of my whole class should be on the waiting list for schools we apply for. So first of all, a little background information on me. I scored a 241 on my math test in the 90th percentile. So the sight of a wait list was very shocking, especially considering I applied for these schools by myself with no help from any parent or guardian. This is how serious I take this, but it wasn't only me. Almost my whole class was either put on the wait list or was deemed ineligible. But not going to any advanced program, I will miss out on all the extracurricular activities we have, such as filming and movie production, which puts extra challenges on top of us. But the thing is, when we see that we were put on the waiting list, that demotivates us, and because if we don't get into a good school, we will have a fixed mindset. I was also very eager to find out what school I was going to be accepted. I stayed in school all day checking my email every 2 minutes. But when I got home, I was devastated. I don't feel like I should be held back from reaching my goals. So please, CCSD board members, consider finding or making an advanced program for us, because I know that we are capable.
Very well.
Well done.
Yeah.
Dang.
I
love that.
Uh-oh, now y'all gonna get cut up.
Michael, you don't talk that good at 40.
I just want to say that when I was here in January, a lady approached me about my comment, which was unacceptable, and the security and Charleston police are taking care of that matter. Only because I was with my grandchildren, did nothing happen that day, because y'all would clearly remember what happened. I just want to speak about, I'm not on anybody's side, I'm in the middle, okay? I'm hearing teachers calling students their friends. Students are not friends of teachers. So I would say, for y'all to let them know, stop calling children their friends. They're the teachers. Children are not their friends. And I've heard a teacher call a student that he was acting crazy. Stop that. If you don't have a child, you don't know how children behave, so therefore stop using these terms. Because children are actually thinking whatever you tell them, that's what they think. My friend's grandson, his teacher had him write 100 times that he will stop acting crazy in class. I told her that I'm an advocate, but that's your job to contact the teacher. You need to talk with that teacher. Because there was no reason that she should have him write that 100 times. On social media, I don't know if anybody's seen it, the little boy was hit about 5 or 6 times on his arm. He asked, what did he do? The teacher was irate, saying that he interrupted the class. That's just unacceptable things that's going on. Schools need classes with 2 teachers in the classroom for the children that have behavioral problems. We have a lot of cultural diversity. There's no patience. We don't need guns in school. Some kids say they don't have calculators. How are you going to have an arm, a gun, when kids don't have what they need? Food is being thrown away. Kids are not being allowed to eat breakfast past 7:59. They're having to go 2 or 3 hours before they can eat. That's not right. That's really not, it's not right. I just did want to say, the kids are being put out of class for no reason at all. And that's where the patient comes in at. The kids are being put out of class for no reason at all. And one student I overheard saying that the teacher was showing off in front of the girl students. We just got to reevaluate a whole lot of things.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Carrie McCormick, Jenny Garris, Lindsay Ballinger, Brandy Graham, and Courtney Sorry.
Yep, you can just, any one of us.
Here, I'll pass you.
Dyslexia is a generational issue. My mother, brother, and child are all dyslexic. My mother sold our home to pay for my brother's education after CCSD schools failed to address dyslexia over 20 years ago. I started to notice early signs of dyslexia when my child was 4 years old. And every teacher and IEP meeting from preschool to 3rd grade, I would ask about dyslexia. All would say not dyslexic, but inattentive issues, ADHD. I heard very well-meaning phrases like, don't worry, the light bulb will just go off. Even if it was dyslexia, they had no intention of using a different reading curriculum. Well, the light bulb did go off, but that light bulb was within my husband and me when we realized we could no longer trust our public schools to provide appropriate education. By the middle of 3rd grade, we had still seen no substantial progress despite the fact that she was in resource class 80 minutes every day. We sought outside evaluations and confirmed dyslexia. We also found a tutor to provide the instructions our schools could not. And although the diagnosis was there, the school would not acknowledge the disability and continued to use curriculums that expressly say not for dyslexic children. Researching more, I found out that in fact, schools can acknowledge dyslexia as of 2015 per Dear Colleague letter from the U.S. State Department of Education. And indeed, our schools and district have failed to provide free and appropriate education. It is unfortunate that many families go through this struggle alone without the school support, lack of early identification, and services that could be so beneficial to the child. In 2018, we find ourselves still unable to provide appropriate education. My hope is that we can come together to provide positive solutions and support all of our dyslexic students.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have something to hand out. Can I go ahead? Okay.
Yeah.
You can pass that on if you'll put it on that side. My name is Jenny Garris. Thank you for letting me speak today. I am dyslexic, as are two of my sons. Dyslexia is a specific learning disability that is neurobiological in origin. The brain processes written material differently. This makes it hard to recognize, spell, and decode words. It is not a visual problem. It does not stem from any lack of intelligence. It is not a result of poor teaching, instruction, or upbringing. It is simply a difference in the way our brains are wired. Dyslexia affects 1 in 5 students. Charleston County has 50,000 students. That means 10,000 of our CCSD students are struggling right now. As a child, dyslexics are often delayed in typical milestones, such as crawling, walking, and talking. They may mispronounce words, find rhyming challenging, and appear to not distinguish between different word sounds. At school, they may take longer to learn letters of the alphabet and how they are pronounced. They may have problems remembering the days of the week and the months of the year. They will have trouble associating letters with their sounds, sounding out simple words like dog or cat, and breaking words apart. What I handed out, what you see before you, is what a dyslexic sees. On the opposite side is the translation. One of the misconceptions about dyslexia is that it is an intellectual death sentence. It is not. Dr. Sally Shaywitz from Yale says dyslexia is an island of weakness surrounded by a sea of strengths. When dyslexics learn to read and focus on their strengths, they can achieve amazing things. A few famous dyslexics are Albert Einstein, Bill Gates, Richard Branson, Muhammad Ali, Walt Disney, Will Smith, Justin Timberlake, and Whoopi Goldberg. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Ballinger. I'm a mother of 3 daughters with dyslexia. I have had children in the Charleston County schools for the last 5 years, and during that time, we have received no help with identification, testing, or reading therapy. I am here to paint a picture of dyslexia by the numbers. 80% of children with a learning disability actually have dyslexia. Because our state and our county are just beginning to consider dyslexia, a majority of the students with a reading disability have not received proper instruction. Therefore, they remain in special education services, making little progress. Up to 80% of those in the criminal justice system are low-level readers or illiterate. According to the U.S. Census, 3rd grade reading scores are now used to forecast future prison populations. The South Carolina Department of Education, Charleston County ELA standards in 2017 have 54% of 3rd graders not meeting reading grade level. Also, 54% of 8th graders are not meeting reading grade level. So we see that children that are behind in 3rd grade are still in the same place 5 years later, and they have made no gains. If you remember one statistic today, I hope it is this one, because it shows that what we are doing is currently not working. The current reading curriculum used by our county does not work for a dyslexic reader. In Charleston County, we are simply taking what isn't working in the classroom for those children, and we are putting the same methodology in the resource room with additional time, energy, and money wasted. Early intervention is the key to changing the outcome for a child. Dyslexia is identifiable with a 92% accuracy rate by the age of 5.5. Evidence-based interventions exist, and they must begin early to preserve self-confidence. As I stated previously, 80% of children in special education have dyslexia. If you can identify this disability and you can provide appropriate interventions, many of those kids will progress and move out of special education, and it will save the district millions of dollars in the long run, and it will give children a real chance to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Board. I'd like to thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. My name is Brandy Graham. I'm the proud wife and mother of dyslexics. Imagine being told that you would make a good dishwasher or busboy at the age of 17. Imagine graduating with what appears to be a high school diploma, only to find out it is a certificate of attendance. Imagine spending what should be the best part of your youth in self-contained classes, only to be taught on your grade level. Imagine to be around autistic children, children with behavior problems, wondering, thinking if you are just like them when your issue is you can't read. What's crazy is this happened to my husband over 20 years ago, and friends, it's still happening today. That's insanity. The private schools in South Carolina that specialize in structured, diagnostic, and prescriptive approach understand that the public sector doesn't either understand or can't provide these services. That's you, school board. We currently have 3 private schools in South Carolina that range in price from $19,000 a year to $29,000 a year. Today, I ask you to stop allowing these private schools pimp you out, and please start educating our children. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Hope Gresham. I have a degree in early childhood education. I am certified in Georgia and South Carolina to teach in grades pre-K through 5th. We moved to Charleston about 4 years ago, and when I found out we were moving to this area, I researched schools, researched school districts, and we chose Charleston County Public Schools for our children because we felt like they would get the best education here. I have a 17-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son. My 8-year-old son was at a local public school for kindergarten and first grade, where he was behind in reading both years. Both years he was in reading intervention with very little gain. My husband is dyslexic. He suggested to me that our son might be dyslexic. He saw the symptoms. I told him I was an educator and I would know if my child was dyslexic. I totally disagreed with him. We met with his teacher and his reading intervention teacher at the end of first grade to request retention because of how little he had gained and how behind he was. We asked very specific questions about dyslexia. We were told he did not have any learning disabilities. He did not need to be tested for anything. He showed no signs of dyslexia. We paid thousands of dollars over the summer to have him tested to find out why he was not making significant progress. He is in fact dyslexic. He has dysgraphia and he has auditory processing disorders. After researching and finding out that he would not be provided the education that he needed, the free and appropriate education, I chose to pull him out of public school to homeschool him myself. I've had to buy the curriculum to teach him because that curriculum is not provided in public schools. So at our own expense, I've had to pull him out, and I am now educating him in the way that a dyslexic learns to read. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Courtney Sarr, and I want to say thank you so much for hearing all of us moms speak today on dyslexia. I'm also coming to you with dyslexia, but I'm not just here to speak about our children, my child. I'm also a mom that's dyslexic myself. My son is dyslexic. But I'm not here to speak about him. I'm here to speak about all the children that are not going diagnosed in our district right now. These moms are really lucky because they're been able to provide for their children. But all of us have had to pay for private testing and tutoring, but testing, which can cost up to $2,000 for testing to have our children diagnosed with dyslexia. What about the children in our other schools that don't have parents that are knowledgeable about this? They're going undiagnosed, untreated. We are also some of the parents over here actually have gotten certified in the proper methods of teaching their children. As you heard of the mom that just before me, that she's had to pull her children out of school to give them the services they need. We're better than this. Looking at our numbers in Charleston County, one of our schools right downtown here, Sanders Clyde, by 5th grade, 74.1% of those children are below grade level. That's unacceptable for our kids to be below grade level like that. So we have a plan. We are going to be giving you our plan because we have done a lot of research. We have learned in the district that not a lot of research has been done on this. But if you look at New Jersey and other states, they have incredible amounts of research. They have a whole handbook on dyslexia and how to implement resources in the school for children. All we have to do is copy it. They've done a lot of work for us already. So we're asking that when we put our proposal forward, you will look at it, consider it, and please, please give these children the resources they need, because we're able to do it for our children, but there is 80% probably of those children in our district undiagnosed that are in the resource classes currently. That's a lot of children that are not getting these services, and I don't want them being told ever that they can be a dishwasher. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Pam McNeil, River Avedon, Don Galst, and D. Griffin.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I would like to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of my daughter. My topic tonight is bullying. And it came to my mind when I realized that this child is really being bullied. There's a song sung by Mary Mary's Crawl, Yesterday. I've cried my last tear yesterday. I am a mother, and I heard my child cry her last tear last month. I went to the school, talked to the principal, talked to the assistant principal, nothing. I've heard her cry yesterday. Mommy, I don't want to go back to the school. I'm tired of being bullied. I'm tired of them texting me and saying, I wish you would have died with your cousin. Yesterday, she cried out. Yesterday, I am the mother. I heard my child crying. I can't do it no more. I want you all to realize bullying is something serious. When I turn on the news and I see children killing each other, yesterday I realized as a parent, I'm going to step forth because this is the child that I birthed. Yesterday, she cried her last tear. Mommy, help me. Yesterday, I gave the last report to the principal that didn't do nothing. The last report to the assistant who didn't do nothing. Yesterday, I prayed. God, she cried her last tear. Board, my girl got to be transferred out of that school because I don't want to wait until the undertaker calls the coffin and says, Mother, it was yesterday when your child cried, I've been being bullied too long. Bullying got to go yesterday.
Thank you. Yeah.
Someone getting that one?
Yeah, we got it.
Got it.
Hello, my name is River Avedon, and I am a sophomore at School of the Arts. Recently, a close friend of mine and fellow student at School of the Arts contacted me, desperately seeking help. A mountain of homework, ever-worsening home situation, and an especially bad depressive episode had left them feeling hopeless, despondent, and even suicidal. I attempted as best as I could to coach them through their issues, but they made little progress, became scared what this friend might do if they didn't get legitimate help soon. I recommended they get a therapist so they could receive proper evaluation and medication which could help, but they told me they didn't have the money for something like that, and their parents didn't believe it to be effective anyways. Stories like this are why a psychologist is so crucial at schools across the district. Mental illnesses like depression, anxiety, and anorexia seem to plague more and more of the Charleston County student body. They can be some of the most difficult diseases to deal with and some of the easiest to ignore. Having a school psychologist is extremely important to help us through these dangerous, even life-threatening conditions and ensure a safe, prosperous education. And I ask you to invest in having a mental health professional in every school. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dawn Holst, and I'm here on behalf of my son, Charles Holst, about the Early College High School. I believe at the moment that it's a great program, but he's been denied because he's gifted and talented. And I think y'all need to really look at your gifted and talented program because it's not what it's cracked up to be. He was gifted and talented when he was in the 3rd grade because he can do 4 or 5 math problems in his head, but he sucks at English. He hates science. And he's being denied a perfect opportunity. My son has social anxiety. He missed out being diagnosed with Asperger's by 4 points. So he doesn't do people, he doesn't do noises. He can do brilliant things, but not in a school setting. He tests off the charts on a standardized test because it is perfectly quiet in that room. But when they're dropping pencils and kids passing notes and making noise, every bit of that distracts him. And I've applied now and discussed with the guidance counselor, the director of the school, and now her boss, the director of the program, and he told me my last-ditch effort was to come talk to y'all because my child can't do big groups. And his 2 choices are James Island Charter High School, which is the only other school that has an IB program, and St. John's High School. which isn't prepared for him. They have a beautiful, wonderful principal over there, has great ideas, really enthusiastic. Not going to do me any good this year. And my oldest child dropped out of James Island High School, also gifted and talented, in the IB program. Got kicked out of the IB program for 1C in science, which she hates. So I'm looking for an overturned decision or whatever I can ask you for to get my son into this school. I have jumped through every hoop. I've jumped through every hoop for 15 years, from elementary school all the way now to high school, because my kids deserve better. And everyone's kids deserve better, but you really got to do something about this gifted and talented. It's not doing them any good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any idea what she's talking about?
Not a clue.
Yeah, that makes sense. Talking about gifted and talented, wasn't any good.
Good evening. Like the mother there, I've cried my last tear yesterday. Well, it's been a 2-year battle for me, and I've spoken to all of y'all. Nothing has been done. Bullying protocol, that 800 number, take it off, because it means nothing. It means nothing. 2 years. The same young lady that I got the police report on just assaulted him again. Now, I certainly do appreciate the new principal. That young doctor has been more proactive than I've seen in the past couple years since replacing the prior principal. I've told my son something different. In the words of Malcolm X, by any means necessary. Defend yourself by any means necessary. And I told this to Dr. Perino, because I'm tired. I've come to y'all. We've done the bullying protocol. I've gone to the North Charleston Police Department. You know what Captain Hill told me? I went to the chief. Well, the school district don't want us to apply harsh charges. So the 2 gentlemen who videotaped my son in the commode and put it up on the internet got disorderly conduct. In your own policy, that's only a level 2. This gentleman is still in school. I heard Ms. Coates talking about expulsion. This young lady has assaulted my son. You want to see pictures of his busted lip? Twice. Going to the police department. They won't do nothing because they said their hands are tied because of y'all. By any means necessary. And if y'all have a problem with it, y'all come to me because I'm the adult. And honestly, I know the principal and the commandant can't be everywhere to defend my child, but my child can defend himself. I don't know what else I can ask of y'all. So I'm telling my son, you defend yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Ripple.
Okay, Madam Chair, this concludes our public comments for tonight.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam
Next.
Chair,
Yes.
the policy item coming before you for first reading, it is first reading of policy KB. It literally changes the words parent involvement to parent and family engagement. It reflects the state law that changed the wording and is more inclusive of the communities that we live in today. So it is simply saying it's a family and parent and family engagement instead of just parent involvement.
All right, so we have a motion to approve from Mr. Garrett and a second from Reverend Collins. Do we have any questions? All right, Mr. Hollenshed?
All right.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Garrett? Yes. Reverend Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Jeffrey?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Staubs?
Yes.
Reverend Mack?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion passes. Ms.
Madam Chair, the second item, thank you.
And he seconded.
There's been no change in the wording from your first reading to the second reading.
All right, so we have a
Second.
motion from Reverend Collins and a second from Mr. Garrett and Michael.
Oh, sorry.
Any questions? So this is policy GCCAAA, which is donation of leave. It's second reading. Mr. Hollenshed?
All right.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Garrett?
Yes.
Reverend Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Jeffrey?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Staubs?
Yes.
Reverend Mack?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion passes. The next item is D3 bus lot, which we discussed earlier during executive session. So we'll probably need an update from you guys on timing of stuff at some point, so. I don't think we have any other issues there. The next item is audit and finance.
Reverend Mack, can you take that?
Out of district?
The fiscal year 18 Small Women Minority Business Enterprise Plan.
Finance.
I know, I think.
I didn't prepare for it.
Out of district.
He's coming back.
Damn, I'm trying to get
Move to
to it.
accept the plan as written. Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept the fiscal year 2018 Small Women Minority Business Enterprise Plan. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded.
Okay, you seconded, I'm sorry, who made the
Collins.
motion?
Todd.
Todd.
Okay,
What's next?
Todd made the motion. All right, Reverend Collins?
We're straight.
Okay. All right, so do we have any questions on that?
Especially small women minority?
Yes.
It's something that the district is required to submit. This was actually, should have come in May of last year, and it's coming now. The next one will come in May of this year, so in 2 months.
Right, it's the report they give you. It's a board policy
The
that it's
plan
been
following
presented to us.
following the board policy.
Okay.
My question is, are we voting that we accept this, or what are we doing on this?
Yeah,
Just accepting it.
just accepting it.
So the goal is 20%?
Yes.
Right.
And last year,
That's
we
the
were at
policy.
30%.
So why is it 20% this year then?
That's just been our policy. We just exceeded it last year.
He's not saying that the goal last year.
Right,
was 30. He's saying that we're going above and beyond.
Right, we exceeded. Yeah, last year we hit 30%. Right.
Okay,
But the
any
policy has
questions?
been 20%.
All right, Mr. Hollenshed?
All right.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Garrett?
Yes.
Reverend Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Jeffrey?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Staubs?
Yes.
Reverend Mack?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
I move to approve the student remain through the end of this school term only.
And we
I would
waive,
like to make a friendly amendment, Todd, if we could, and waive the tuition requirement since there's only 40 days remaining in school.
I agree to that.
For our school?
Yes.
Yeah.
We don't get to make policy or decisions for the other
Let me ask
district.
you a question, so.
Prorated.
Well, we need a second.
Wait a minute.
hold on a second.
Is the
So,
tuition already paid for the student?
no, the student has been in our school.
He's a stall
He's a
student.
stall student, and they
moved
moved,
out of
they
county.
moved to Berkeley County, but he wouldn't be able to, his credits wouldn't count because they're on a different schedule, right? And so we approved for him to stay, but we didn't specifically say that he could remain without paying tuition.
What I'm asking Dr. Postlewaite is that, and maybe you don't know, but being that he's already installed, with the money, is that money already paid to the district already? We already have the money for the student?
It's not
Right.
reflected.
Yeah.
I think we're talking about two
Two
different
different
things. You're
things.
absolutely right. The funding from the state that we would have received for that student,
Right.
which is about a third of the cost of educating that student, came to the state. But because the student moved out of the county, the question is now do his parents have to pay tuition
Right.
for him to come back into Charleston County? And that's what the board is clarifying, that the parent wouldn't have to do
Right.
that because it was circumstances beyond their control.
Right.
So we're not asking the parents to reimburse.
Right.
Right, right. I think the point was making that Berkeley County never got money for the student anyhow.
No,
Right,
they've
no.
been installed, they've been in our district for
Right.
11 years.
Call the
So-
question.
So Todd, your motion is to allow the student to stay and
Stay
waive
without-
any
waive
tuition.
And I second that
Okay.
motion.
All right,
I second it.
I second it.
You made a friendly amendment, I second it.
we all second it. Mr. Hollenshed, how do you vote? Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Garrett?
Yes.
Reverend Collins? Ms. Jeffrey?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Priscilla's upset she never gets a second
Second. She seconded something, I got it.
Shouldn't have did the amendment.
Give me one.
Mr. Miller said yes. Reverend Mack?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion passes. The next item is, and we have a lot to do here, the superintendent's report.
Thank you. I'd like to yield my time tonight to three departments. One, the Learning Services, to talk with us about the state's new accountability system and how EVOS plays into that. I'd like to yield some time to Erica and her team to talk about the Van said the accreditation. We've never been accredited as a school district, and we're going to try to do that this year, and yield a bit of time to Don Kennedy to give the financial report. So, team, take it away.
All right, I would ask that the slide deck be projected. We have a quick slide deck
on these two items. So Learning Services is going to share two informational items. You should have a folder at your place that has a slide deck. If it's not loaded, we'll just look at, you have hard copies. Yeah, we'll go with the hard copies. How about that? So there are two items that we want to share this evening. One is EVOS, Education Value Add System, and the second is the Simulated State Accountability Ratings. And while there are just 3 team members at the podium, we really represent the entire Learning Services staff because this is a big lift. This takes a lot of concerted effort on our parts, and we want to run through these things with you. EVOS, if you look at that first, you have a handout in your board packet, and that handout actually is a training timeline. That's the work of Dr. Donnelly and Dr. Gear, and they've built out a training timeline that takes us through February all the way to June. Now, it's important to note that we just got those EVOS results back. The state promised them in January. We got them in mid-March, so that's why we're bringing this to you tonight. If we'd have gotten them sooner, we would have had this conversation in January. The gist of the information is about how we make it actionable. So I'm going to ask Dr. Williams to come up and talk to you about what are we going to do with the EVOS data and why it's important.
So great evening to you all. So it's my job to tell you what are we going to do with the EVOS data. So in case you did not know, EVOS stands for Education Value Added Assessment System. And to start off, we want you all to understand that we understand it's of the utmost importance that we stress to our principals, our school leaders, how they need to impress upon their staff, their teachers, that this is a reflective tool. We want to use this to reflect and think about what it is that we can do better for our scholars. Now, if you don't know about EVOS, EVOS focuses on growth more than it does achievement. To be more specific, it looks at individual scholars to see if they're progressing more, less, or the same relative to their peers. Now, based on the trends that you see with EVOS, it generates a lot of reflective reports. Now, these reports you can use to assess the effectiveness of the district and the entities within it. Now, once you get these reports, what we use it for is to look at our instructional practices. And some of the things we look at when we look at our instructional practice, it helps us develop programs, supports, and also a plan to differentiate instruction. And why we want to do this is to support all scholars within our system. Now, I was hoping you all had the PowerPoint, but if you don't, if you could turn to this. Do you all have this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
we got them. Handout.
As I mentioned earlier, we are looking at EVOS to look at our continuous improvement in the district. So we have a continuous improvement model here with EVOS embedded in it. So that's your visual representation. So when we look at all of these, the data that EVOS will give us, the reports, the first thing we want to do is identify our areas of opportunity. Once we identify our areas of opportunity, we then want to develop a plan. Now, when we develop a plan, of course, we want to progress monitor. The reason why we want to progress monitor, we want to make sure, is the plan working? Is it being implemented with fidelity? And also, do schools need our support in implementing the plan? Finally, in this cycle, you see we want to celebrate our successes. Now, we know we're not where we want to be, but we definitely want to celebrate the successes along the path. So as I told you earlier, EVOS gives us gives us some layered reporting, which are our reflective reports. Now, the first report I want to talk about are our value-added reports. When you look at the value-added reports, you see, according to your slide deck, that slide, we can look at the schools overall. The next are diagnostic reports. We look at trends prevalent to all student groups. With the diagnostic reports, you can look at individual demographic groups. You can look at them individually or in combination. Some of the demographic groups include African American, male, female, Caucasian. And like I said, you can look at those individually or as a combination. Our next report, our decision data board, our dashboard, these are trends noted across grades and subjects. And our teacher reports are how do we best support our teachers. Now, also, in addition to how we support our teachers, again, going back to that reflective piece, having teachers reflect and look at how we can improve our instructional practices. And the final reports that EVOS renders are student projections. Now, the thing I like about the student reports, one of the student projections is a student report that allows you to see scholars that are scoring at the lower percentiles, the middle, and higher achieving. Now, the reason why this is so important, because I spoke about those supports, those programs, the differentiated instruction earlier. It helps us accelerate the learning for all those scholars. Now, we will be discussing the EVOS reports at our next countywide principals meeting with our principals, and also the data protocol that these principals can use to help, again, accelerate the learning of all scholars in CCSD.
Dr. Williams?
Yes.
EVOS is used as what kind of tool for the teachers?
I said a reflective tool.
What does that entail? What does that mean?
A reflective tool means that with the data that we have from EVOS, we're asking our principals to sit down with teachers and have conversations about the data, to reflect on, where we see our areas of opportunity so we can grow from there.
Does that play into their performance reviews?
It does not.
Thank you.
Does it play into student achievement?
Good evening. We wanted to, in your packet, you should have 2 circle graphs that speaks to the state accountability framework. So we just wanted to place before you once again, just an overview of that state system to.
Any smaller?
Pardon me?
I'm sorry. Could the print be any smaller?
Sorry.
We're old, so go
Okay.
ahead.
But we did want to place that before you once again, just to highlight what the state accountability framework entails in terms of report card ratings, and then speak to how EVOS interfaces with the state accountability framework. And so, as you might recall, the main domains associated with the accountability framework are achievement, so just overall proficiency, progress, are our boys and girls growing at adequate rates, English language proficiency for schools who have that subgroup of 20, are they making adequate progress toward their goals? Also science and social studies, as well as the learning environment, which speaks to the survey, the climate survey that will come out. There are a few things we want to keep with you, we want you to take away to remember as it relates to state report card ratings. First off, I think it's worth noting that this system, this framework, attributes 80% of students' performance solely on reading and math. I think that's tremendous, that 80% of the framework is all about reading and math performance. Also, growth is being amplified and really emphasized with this particular instrument. So much so that all students' growth will be measured, but again, an additional look will be taken with the the lowest performing 20% of children. So the state has an emphasis on growth, the district has an emphasis on growth. And we have really coached and worked with principals around addressing and coming up with a plan for how we will support those boys and girls who are performing at the bottom percentiles. We also want to call your attention to the idea of how schools, not necessarily the district, but how the schools will receive their report card rating. So for every child who takes the SE Ready test in the spring, they will accrue points on a scale from 0 to 3. So if a student did not meet expectations or standards, they receive 0 points. All the way to the end, if they exceed standards or expectations, they receive 3 points. So what happens is those points are converted to a scale, a range, and that's how we receive, and it should be in your packet, the ratings, all the way from exemplary, thank you, all the way from excellent down to unsatisfactory. I think it's important to note that in the past, the district would get an overall rating, but now it's solely on schools. And we just wanted to bring forward just what that will look like, perhaps when the new instrument comes forward in the fall. So the Learning Services Department has done a simulation. It's hot off the press, and we just wanted to share the framework of how it rolled out. Thank you.
So you've probably noticed a common thread throughout every opportunity we've had to present to the board or talk with the board that we're doing a lot of data analysis. So Dr. Donald's team, Laura, if you'll come on up, ran these simulations. That accountability system was voted on for first read back in the fall before the winter holidays. It got its second reading in January. So we were well into the school year when that accountability system got approved. But this is the plan that the state sent forward to Washington, D.C. as a part of our Every Student Succeed Act requirements. They've set this plan forward. We wanted to know what we would look like last year if we ran that plan, take our data and compare it to that plan. So that's what we've done. So I will tell you up front, you're going to see things in that data that are going to hurt your heart. It hurt our heart. You're going to see some successes in that data, in those data. So just know that this is us trying to get out ahead of that state accountability system and figure out how we can make every minute count from now until the end of the year. So in your folder, what you have, and I hope it's full size, and Mr. Miller, we will send this to you. And lesson learned, next time we'll put 2 slides to a sheet, but you should have a full-size grid that looks like this attached to, yes, okay, great. So the last things we want to leave you with is what we got when we ran those simulations. And so Laura, I'll ask you to talk about them.
So the first table that you have is labeled Simulated Achievement Ratings. And as Cindy said, this simulates what our scores in this area, achievement, would have been if the accountability system that has now been approved had been in effect last year. So it's based on last year data, but it's our best kind of early look at how we might do. So on the left-hand side of that table, you'll see the achievement ratings for the category, ranking from excellent at the top all the way down to unsatisfactory. Because when we get the report cards, each school will get a rating in each category. So this is achievement. Now this counts for 35 to 40% for elementary and middle schools, and it counts for 25 to 30% for high schools. So it is a pretty significant component. The second column you see there is the target percent that will be had in this accountability system, because the State Department will ensure that these percentages are found. So, for example, you see that 10% statewide of elementary, middle, and high schools will be labeled excellent in achievement. 15% will be good, 40% average, 25% below average, and 10% unsatisfactory. So that will happen in 2018 when they rescale based on the new data. The next column, or 2 columns, look at the number and percent of schools that fall into each of those performance categories. So, for example, you see that for elementary schools, 14 schools would be categorized as excellent, which is 26.4%, substantially more than the 10% that we would expect based on statewide numbers. And you can go all the way down and see the different categories. For example, see that the good and average categories end up with lower percentages than we would have expected. The same way, you can go and look at the middle school simulations and the high school simulations, and then overall is where we just combined all of our schools, elementary, middle, and high, and looked at the percentages there.
So Michelle Simmons talked to us about the fact that this is proficiency and growth. It's performance and growth. So that, we just looked at the achievement part of that accountability system, and now we want to look at the growth part. And if you flip that over, you will see the impact that the growth will have.
Right. So this is the academic progress piece, and it is worth 35 to 40% for elementary and middle schools. The high schools don't have a growth component. Again, the same kind of interpretation, excellent all the way to unsat, and there will be predetermined, 15% of schools will be assigned excellent rating, 20% good, 35% average, 20% below average, and then 10% unsatisfactory. So we can then look at how our elementary schools did in this progress or growth category, and you'll see that in the excellent category, we would have had 4.1% of our schools qualify as excellent. So it's substantially lower than what would be expected based on what the statewide numbers will be. And you can go all the way down and you'll see the below average. We had more than would have been expected based on statewide numbers. And then middle school, the same sort of analysis was done. And then the overall just combines elementary and middle schools together.
And again, this is our best estimation, looking at the accountability system, looking at what we know, just running the data. But what we cannot do is exactly say how it will all be combined together. But what this does tell us is that we need to really pay attention to growth. That we need to, and today we had a meeting to talk about a continuum of assessments and what assessments do we have that helps us along the way progress monitor. And we're going to be coming back in April with a plan on literacy. We met with some of the parents that were here earlier. I don't know if they're still here, but we had a meeting with them just last week. We've been listening to them. We've got some plans for assessing early in kindergarten and first grade and progress monitoring along the way. So we want to talk to you about that, and we'll talk to you about our proposal for addressing reading difficulties in Charleston County School District. But mainly, we just want you to know that we are vigilant and we are acting, and this is what would look like if we used last year's data with the current accountability system.
Reverend Collins has a question.
Thank you for your report. Does this include, the sheet you just presented now, does it include charter schools too?
Yes.
So when I look at elementary, so it says it says 2. That means across Charleston County, there are only 2 schools.
2 schools that would have been
Predicted
categorized as excellent
And all
using last year's data.
On their
For their
growth.
growth.
On their growth.
On the growth.
Right.
So this makes up 35-40% of the.
Of their
the whole picture.
overall rating. That's right.
And this is predicted.
Remember, I simulated, I see that, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the other one, this side is growth. What was the other side?
That was achievement, or remember we talked about proficiency?
Actual achievement?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
I did.
Go ahead.
As you guys start to chart out where we are based on the state assessments, how drilled down are we going to go with our data?
We didn't have the slide up at the beginning when Dr. Williams was speaking, but there's a really great visual with circles. We are going to drill down and look at district trends, school trends, class trends. We can access individual students, and yes, we are disaggregating the data.
When do you think you have a report that's not simulated but will be based on actual
The actual report will be generated by the state, and we'll get it next fall.
next fall for this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. And I think I just want to share, in some states, the accountability system's very different. In South Carolina, you get one shot at that state assessment. Not all states are like that. South Carolina has a very strict, stringent accountability system. And I'm not bashing it, I'm just saying what it is. It's very strict, it's very stringent. But in some states like North Carolina and Virginia, they have a retest option on that state assessment. South Carolina does not give a retest option. The state I just left, you tested in March, you had 6 to 8 weeks of remediation, the student could take it over. So each state comes up with its own accountability system, and this is South Carolina's.
Any other questions? Nope. Okay, thank y'all very much. We know there's a lot of work in there. Thank you very much.
We lost half of the board, everybody else?
All right, Erica?
Good evening.
Erica ran off, Chris and Todd and Kevin.
As Dr. Postlewaite said when she was beginning her report, the district has not been accredited before, and so we are excited to be going through the advanced ed accreditation process. And tonight, what we're going to ask you to do is to go through the system quality factors diagnostic. And what it is it's a survey. And advanced ed is all about self-assessment and improvement. And we have identified 15 questions in the diagnostic that pertain directly to the governing board. Those are the only questions we're going to look at this evening, but you'll have an opportunity to weigh in on the entire diagnostic at another time. So I'm going to start passing these out, and Beth's going to get started.
Do you want me to go get Reverend Collins?
No.
Oh, you got it?
Did you say no?
No, I didn't.
Oh,
He said.
You said it too.
I thought
I didn't say a word.
I thought Erica was like, no.
So as Erica is passing those out, I want to say just a little bit about what you'll be doing. Tonight or this afternoon at the board meeting, you've done a lot of thinking about other people, about students and teachers and parents and principals and district staff members. What we're going to ask you to do now is what our principals are doing in their schools with their teachers, what our district staff departments have done, and that is to think about yourself and your immediate colleagues, the Board of Trustees. Think about yourself and your colleagues and answer these questions as a self-assessment in terms of thinking about what you and your colleagues do. So if everybody has one, we're going to start with the thicker stapled packet. Okay, and it has circle questions that are in green, and we'll look at each part of this together. We have, in working with principals and district staff people, made a little cheat sheet because some of the words in the advanced ed are pretty heavy in terms of language. So we have a little cliff notes or cheat sheet to go along with the questions as we go through each part, if you want to use that.
Cheat sheet?
Well, not cheat sheet, a helper sheet. I'm sorry, a help sheet, Mr. Miller.
I'm just saying.
I did say that. I'm sorry, a cliff notes might be a better. So we're going to start on the first page with clear direction, and clear direction asks you to think about do we plan strategically? Have we identified priorities as a district? Are we clear with all of our stakeholders about that? And so you have only one question with 3 parts to answer, and that is on page 1. That's question number 1 that's circled. And it asks you to think about how you collaborate to do this. So I'll give you just a minute to answer that question. Okay, if you flip to the second page, to the back of that, you'll see 3 more questions that ask about you and your colleagues and how you work together around strategic vision.
So the governing authority is us.
Yes, you are the governing authority. Yes, ma'am.
That's what they told us anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, the next section starts on page 5. If you want to look at page 5, this section asks about you and your colleagues and how well you relate to each other, how well you work collegially, what kind of expectations you have for each other, and how you work to provide opportunities for everyone in the system, for all staff, all students, all people who work in this system. So for this section, you have only 2 questions, and those are on page 5, if you would take just a minute.
You can ask anybody else.
And they're going to take
Yeah.
it up tonight.
It should be based on any individuals.
Okay, and remember, as we're thinking about these, you're thinking about yourself, but you're also thinking about your work together as a Board of Trustees. Okay? Our next section starts on page 9. And that section is about high expectations. This section asks questions about your high expectations for all students, for all teachers in the district, for district leadership, for our community, and for our parents. So it's asking about your expectations for all of those groups. For this section, you have just the first two questions to answer about yourself and your Board of Trustees colleagues, and that's on page 9, questions 1 and 2.
Oh, man, excuse me. Yeah.
It's probably been the quietest part of your day, right? So the next part starts on page 10, the fourth system quality factor. And remember that our teachers and, I'm sorry, page 12. Our teachers and principals, I need my glasses on all the time here. Our teachers and principals and our district staff are working on these same questions about themselves. But impact of instruction has to do with our having the skills or the capacity to be sure that every student in the district can be successful, every learner can be successful. Can we do that as a system? And so question number 1 is about your work as a governing authority, if you want to work on question number 1. All right, on page 14, you'll see the 5th of the Advanced Ed Quality Standards, and that's resource management. The one thing to point out about resource management, it talks about how well do we do with all of our resources. So our human or people resources, our financial resources, and also our material resources. So it's talking about all of those resources in questions numbers 1 and 2. All right, we have 2 last parts of the survey that we'll work on. The next one is on page 17. On page 17, this category of advanced ed, when the site visit team comes in, they'll talk to us a lot about efficacy of engagement. That is a huge, a really important factor with advanced ed. How deeply, how effectively do we engage various stakeholders, whether those are students or parents or community members, our teachers. And so there's only one question in this section. That's number 1 for our board.
You realize it's a 3-part question.
Yes, I do. Yes, it's a whole page almost question. Yes, sir.
So we answer A, B, and C under 1?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Spend all that paper.
It's an expensive paper.
Expensive paper.
This paper is a hard copy paper. It's resume paper.
So you get a job paper.
It's like you put your last will and testament.
All right, the last part of our multiple choice exam starts on page 20. On page 20, in thinking about yourself and your fellow board members, in its implementation capacity. This section asks about our planning, and do we do that in a way that we're able to take things to scale, that we're able to take an idea about things that might work for students or teachers and move that throughout the system, and what role the board plays in that. In this section, you have questions that are 3 questions with multiple parts on pages 20 and 21. Okay, as you're finishing up, we wanted to give you a chance, if you have any general questions about the process that we're going through, this first part of the advanced ed process, in thinking about our own work and self-assessing, we'd be glad to answer those now, if there are any general questions that you have.
Names go on this?
No,
Just your
no,
name,
in
your
fact,
name on it.
thank you very much, because that was what we should have said first. You do not have to put your name on this at all. And everybody has the same color pen and the same circles, and we don't know what you used to write with, so, okay. Yeah, okay. What we'll do as a follow-up to this, as we mentioned, our principals in schools, as well as every department in the district, is working on a self-assessment, and the next part will be to start talking about our evidence of that. What things are we doing well? What are the areas we need to improve? And how do we think about doing that together? So we will, at our next committee of the whole meeting, give feedback about what your responses were and give you an opportunity to talk about that and the kind of evidence you think we have to share with the visiting team, and we'll also share some results from our district team. Okay, any questions? Okay, Erica's gonna, if you wanna turn them face down or whatever you used to do in school, and she'll take them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank y'all very much. This is great work.
But ET's not done as president.
Who answers all the other questions?
So, district staff members, principals, teachers, parents, community members, we've been working with a number of community stakeholders and internal stakeholders to start going through and answering the others. We'll also give our board members a chance, when we collect that information, to give feedback and to look at those ratings to see if you think those are appropriate or that would have your support in
I'm
terms
just curious, because we got, big sheets of, I don't know how many, 10, 15 pages of paper, and we answered,
You
4 pages
cheated,
worth.
Chris?
No, I'm just wondering, are we? Yeah.
We won't give
The big
those
stack
same
and you
ones
only
back
answer a few of
again.
them?
Well, so we will give you opportunities to have feedback on those, but we did want you to be able to do it anonymously, so.
Just seemed wasteful.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Our constituent boards too. We're working with all of our constituent boards to be sure that they have input and they'll be a part of this process.
Okay, thank you.
We're ready for the financial report?
No, I mean, to have a stack like this, and you only answer like 5 of the 20 questions, 20 pages.
So you should have in your packet the January financial report, and this is the new format with the spread budget. So our revenue is coming in a little lower than what we anticipated. We confirmed with the county auditor earlier in the month that it looks like we're going to miss our mark by about $2 million. He has reconfirmed that, that the growth was not quite as much as we projected. And then remember, we've already anticipated a little bit of decrease in the EFA funding formula. The base student cost decrease didn't decrease statewide, it's just more people showed up. So it looks like we're going to be short about $1 million in the EFA pieces of it. Remember, we budgeted a few years ago 100% for salaries and fringe, so we are definitely coming in under budget for the salaries and fringe. And The supplies and materials and purchase services, we're kind of right on target with those. The other expenditures, it looks like we're in the hole about $3 million, but that's not the case because of the way we have to report our tax anticipation note premium. So we're on target with that. I do want to draw attention to those transfers, that bottom line there. Those are our charter school payments, and we have under budgeted for charter school payments. But we will offset that with some of the lapsed salaries. The good news with this is, remember, we budgeted $7.5 million for fund balance for this year, and our salaries last year at the end of the year came in under budget around $10 million, and we are looking like we're going to come in about $10 million with salary. So there could be some potential of an increase of about maybe $15 to $17 million increase in fund balance this year. So that'll give us some opportunity as we develop the budget going forward for next year. I do want to draw attention to the next page on the budget transfers. Remember the forensic audit identified that we were doing excessive budget transfers, so we are bringing that down in FY16 from beginning of the year through January. We had prepared 1,385 budget transfers. We brought that number down in 17 to 591, and so far this year we brought it down to 429, and we will continue to bring that down. Any questions? All right.
Questions? Michael?
Are we still using zero-based budgeting?
The zero-based budgeting is based on what the state mandates, class size for the schools. And Cindy Ambrose has put together some ideas for her division for district-wide initiatives, and we'll be reviewing that with y'all.
I don't know.
We are like a modified zero-based budgeting. Zero-based budgeting, we have to identify, the state mandates certain things for schools, and that's the bulk of our budget is at the schools. It's, a principal in every school, the class size that we have to maintain, which dictates the number of teachers. So our teacher budget is about almost $300 million, over $475 million budget. So that's kind of the baseline of a zero-based budgeting. I don't know if we'll ever be able to get to a true zero-based budgeting module. We're doing like a modified zero-based budgeting method.
Because we can't do a true zero-based budget because the state requires, you got to have a so we can't say, oh, we're not going to have principals.
Can't have principals.
So other than principals and teachers.
Or other, whatever the
It
state
also does media,
requires.
right.
Yeah, media
90% of our school-based personnel are standardized by the state, media specialists, FTs.
All right, any other questions? Okay, thank you. Budget update?
I think we want to say just a word about that tonight. As Mr. Kennedy is making his way to the microphone, I will tell you, if you noticed some paper wastage, we have had real challenges with the copier, which no teacher wants to hear about because they have copier problems all the time. But that's, so if you notice some premium paper, it's because we weren't able to copy for you ourselves and had to take it to the RICO people to copy. So that, don't get used to that. It will be back to we probably will start doing the documents in black and white. We really want to reduce the paper costs. Thanks.
So thank you, Don Kennedy, Chief Administrative Officer at the March 12th Committee of the Whole meeting. I presented to the board. It laid out the data that will be presented to the board as we get ready to adopt the budget. And so I want to reiterate those items tonight, what you will receive and when you will receive them. So this coming Friday, March 30, you will receive the preliminary documents for the first reading of the budget. And so that will include information on projected revenue, projected expenditures, and some other data that would be in a PDF format. Between then and May 7th, you will receive additional information. And so with the first set of information come to the board after March 30 would be with the Audit and Finance Committee on April the 10th. At that point, we will review with the Audit and Finance Committee the proposed update to the fund balance policy, If you recall in the presentation I made, the intent of the change on the fund balance policy is to assist the district to be able to do multi-year financial planning and budgeting. And so that will be coming to the Audit and Finance Committee as a draft policy update on April the 10th. And then we will bring that to the Committee of the Whole on April the 16th. So on April the 16th, then you will have all of the data that you need for the first reading of the budget, including the updated fund balance policy, as well as the district indicators that we will be using. And then at that time on April the 16th, we will also, for the first reading of the budget, link the financial initiatives, the budgeting of the financial initiatives to the district indicators that are being developed now. And so you have that by April the 10th for the Audit and Finance Committee, and then going on to April the 16th with the Committee of the Whole. And at the same time with the Committee of the Whole, I think the Policy and Personnel Committee will also review jointly with the Audit and Finance Committee the policy update on fund balance. And then between the first and second reading, so the first reading of the budget is April the 23rd. The second reading of the budget is May 21st. So between those two periods of time, you will receive hard copies on May 7th of the actual budget book and all the details that you would need to be able to understand the budget before you vote on the budget on May 21st. And then in between that, again, on April the 16th, with the Committee of the Whole, we will have a detailed budget workshop so that we can explain all the financial components of it. So what questions do you have?
I'm sorry, what was the date of the first reading?
It's April 23rd.
Third, thank you.
23rd.
And you said that we'll have the info for that by this Friday, the 30th?
So you will have preliminary information by this Friday. And then when we come back from spring break on April 10th, we'll have the complete package for the Audit and Finance Committee, which is April 10th. And then for the Committee of the Whole, the full board, April the 16th. So that will be a week before the vote on the April 21. April 23.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions about time frame or? Any other questions? Okay, thanks, guys. All right, anything else under the superintendent's report?
No, ma'am.
Okay, the consent agenda items we approved. Upcoming meetings, do you want to talk about the March 29th
I'll
event?
just mention this Thursday, Michael Fullen, who's an internationally recognized author, we've been reading one of his books this year, will be addressing the principals. If you'd like to come, just let me know so we can make sure we have room. We do not meet here anymore. We've outgrown this facility because principals bring instructional leaders with them to the meetings. So just let us know if you'd like to come. We start pretty early. You'd be more than welcome. And then the other meetings we listed were just reminders that on April 16th, you also scheduled a budget workshop as well as the Committee of the Whole meeting. We just wanted to remind everyone of that and to wish you a good break next week. We hope that you're able to get a break from us. We plan to take a break from us. Many things.
Good answer.
When are you going to be held at?
At Carolina Park.
For the principal meeting.
Oh, the principal meeting? On the Holiday Center at the Citadel?
Where?
The Holiday Alumni
so-
Center? And then,
How long does it last?
Y'all ain't gonna never see
The
me.
principal's meeting lasts all day, but the portion, you'd be welcome, you should be there by 8. We actually start at 7:30 with the pre-meeting, so at 8 we're rolling, and then you could leave whenever you want. But we would like to know, you'd be welcome to stay through lunch, and then they do breakouts after that.
The district limo can pick us up.
What class?
The district limo.
Do not have a
If you
district
need a
limo.
ride, give me a call.
so remember the Committee of the Whole meeting is at Carolina Park Elementary School.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
When we were doing our conversations with the folks from the Clemson Diversity Study, one of the things they had talked about was a mid-year comeback and talk to us. And I wrote that on my calendar as being around March 30th. That was about the time to expect some updates from them. Dr. Postaway, can we follow up on that and see if there's any middle of the timeframe updates they can provide us, or when we
They
could
actually
expect
plan to
something.
be here on the 23rd.
Thank you.
All right, does anybody else have any other questions or anything to share with our wonderful staff and group that are still here?
Move for adjournment.
Hey, the sun's still shining. They got it easy.
Adjourn.